talking. Let's see my beautiful face. There I am. Absolutely. I got nervous for a second there that the clock was counting at 3, 4, 5, and I got a little antsy. I'm a little nervous today, actually. I'm joined by two of the best sportscasters Southern Ontario, hell, Canada's ever seen. Obviously, you guys know the old guy up there, the once upon a time, the alleged vampire, the hunter of hammerheads. He had all kinds of monikers, absolutely. Down there is a good friend of ours, good friend of the show, Mr. Rod Black. Rod, pleasure to have you on. Thanks for making time for us. Really appreciate it.
Good to have you. Good to see you guys. Nice to be with the vampire.
That's right.
And me, the zombie. It's awesome.
All right. You know what? We're short on time, and obviously this is a fabulous time, Rod, to be a sports fan. Right? We want to get your insights on obviously the autopsy in Raptorland, what the Blue Jays are looking like moving forward. I got a position. Maybe you'll get me off it. Obviously, we want to get to know. Especially, I'm really excited to get to know how Tyler's doing in AA, tearing it up. You got to be so excited about that. But obviously, before we get to any of all those things, this is April. And the Leafs are in the playoffs. They're up 2-1 against Tampa Bay. So I'm going to start it this way, Rod. Do you see anything different in this version of the Leaf Club that would give you a little hope that the story's going to end differently in a couple of days?
Yeah, usually it's the reverse for seasonal happenings in Toronto. Usually around most of Canada in the fall, the Leafs fall. And here in the spring, it's usually the Leafs fall in Toronto. It has been over the last 18 years, as we know. Do I see anything different? I mean, again, it's only 3 games into this series. I think they're much better defensively for sure. Samsonov was very good in the last game. I still don't think this series is any close to being over. I think it's angrier than last time around. These teams hate each other, clearly. But I do think that you cannot. I know a lot of people are getting high over that last win, and we're high over that last win. But, it's the playoffs. And one thing that Tampa Bay Lightning, they have been so dominant over this last decade in the National Hockey League, and certainly over the last 5 years, is that their experience isn't going to make them just wilt and roll over. You're going to see probably a different response. It's so unique. I didn't think the Leafs played particularly well the last game.
And there it is. There it is, Rob. It's right there. Have you obviously as a connoisseur of sports, you've watched your whole life, and that's the difference this year. I believe we'll get Norm to chime in. But the Leafs won a playoff game the other night. They had no business winning. They had and rarely do you see that come playoff time. That this club puts an effort like that together and comes out with a W. 9 times out of 10, historically, that's a loss. They're down 2-1, and all Leaf fans want to jump off the bridge. That's just the way it goes, right?
I don't want to say it reminds me of 30 years ago, when 1993, when they really had their last really great run. I guess you could just, say they did that, a decade later too, in the mid-aughts. But I would say, that's the difference. And goaltending was the difference. And I think John Cooper said that his team played one of its best games of the year. I just think it's the circumstance of playoffs, guys. The difference now, I'd say even hockey now compared to 10 years ago, or even let's go even back to that 30 years ago, is that even in the regular season, there was a semblance of the same kind of game in the postseason. It's not like that anymore. Hockey in the regular season isn't even close to what it is in the postseason. And I do think that regular people go, well, then why have the regular season? Well, the reason is you get yourself together defensively. You start getting trends together. You start doing things that you haven't done before. You start believing in yourself. You start finding ways to win. And that's what thing I do find different than last year. I think the Leafs have a little more grit. They didn't have that kind of grit last year. And we all know what happened last year to John Tavares. And we all know, that kind of gutted that team and what happened to the entire Maple Leaf team. It just seemed that Tampa seemed to rise last year and Toronto seemed to fall. I just think it's different this time around. I really do think it's different. And, but at the same time, Tampa's, they're gritty. They're as gritty as they've ever been too. And they've got 3 of the best players. Have you guys seen the numbers with Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos on the ice together, and how many shots that they had? comparatively. I mean, I think it was like 40 shots compared to whatever anybody else had on the ice. Their accumulation of shots. Now, Samsonov stopped most of those last game. So, they have been good together, but it's the playoffs, guys. It's the playoffs. I do think tonight's a huge game, though. If they can find a way to be better than last game, if Samsonov can stop, if they can win tonight's game, they can win the series. I just don't think they're going to win tonight's game.
So, Rod, want to talk about another great series, or it's turning out to be the Edmonton Oilers. You, Billy, we all know the old expression in sports: adversity builds character, but it also reveals character. So the Oilers are down 3-0. Looks like good night, see ya, nice try, and then they come back, and of course, one of my favorites. I know his dad, Zach, the hero, brilliant overtime goal. He may have. I don't think it's going overboard. Rod, he may have saved the Oilers season. And, I don't know if they've got the goalkeeping and defense to be – they went to the conference finals, but do you think they have enough to get to a conference final or even a Stanley Cup final with what they got up front?
Yeah, full disclosure, you guys, that's my pick to win the Cup. And I will tell you, I didn't think my pick looked good after 3 games. I didn't think they had the offense. Their goaltending has been – so sporadic. Jack Campbell may have given them a spark. And sometimes, remember that Carolina team years ago when they went to the dual goalie system. Normally, when you have 2 goalies that come in, it has to happen quickly in the first round, and then you can go. But rarely ever do 2 goalies win you a Stanley Cup. And trust me, I know what you're saying. It's only the first round. But Edmonton has everything. And I do think they're better than they were last year. They had a taste last year. They had a bitter taste, even though they were swept in the final round. They could have advanced to the Stanley Cup. They were swept by Colorado last year. Connor McDavid, I just think it's almost manifest destiny that this guy somehow wins a Stanley Cup. He's a generational player. It's not even close. When it comes to the best players on the planet right now, it's Connor McDavid here. It's one, and then you can have an argument who the next guys are, but they're so far removed. He's that kind of a player. I think they're well coached, but the question mark has always been for the Oilers ever since they won the Stanley Cups in the 80s and 90s has been goaltending, and they haven't had it. And will they get it? I'm not sure. But that win last night, I'm sure you guys probably said, I was watching another game last night first, and I was watching some basketball, and then I was going to turn over to the Oilers, and I went 3-0 first period. How can you be down 3-0 in the most important game of your season? Because it is the most important game. Like for the Tampa Bay Lightning, any team that's down 2-1, you cannot go down 3-1. I know it happens in the National Hockey League. I know you can come back, but you can't go down. It's so hard. And I'm thinking 3-0. And then so I had to go do some stuff. And then all of a sudden I look back and I go, oh my gosh, they're tied. So I started watching, and then watching Zach Hyman, who said it was the biggest goal of his life. And he scored some big goals, by the way. I do think it's a kind of goal that can propel a team. Remember, it's been 30 years, guys, and I don't want to be that kind of trend guy and say, oh, yeah, it's going to happen. There's magic. A Canadian team can win the Stanley Cup after 30 years. But I do think this team has what it takes. And it's one of those kind of wins on the path that will help you. Now, the question is Game 5. Can they turn it? Here's what I think the biggest trend in the National Hockey League in the playoffs is. You cannot take any team lightly. And it's always been the most exciting. I don't care what anybody says. Out of all the major sports, it is the most exciting, unpredictable round of playoff sports action that you will ever see in any sport. And that's why the Stanley Cup is so hard to win. And never take any team lightly. And I'm not saying the Oilers did, but I don't think a lot of people saw the Kings giving them the kind of run they had. But I do think it's the kind of win that will take them a long, long way. Remember the Montreal Canadiens? They had to win, they're on their run. How many overtime games did they win? I think it was like 10 or 11, right? On that path in 93.
Yep.
That's insane. But that's what you have to do. You have to have that kind of luck, and then, that puck luck. And maybe we saw that from the Toronto Maple Leafs the other night the same way. Just get pucks on net sometimes. You never know what happens.
Although you can't recreate that.
Hold on, Rumack. Let me get it. Take it easy, Rumack. Let that Greek get a word in here. Let the 2 professionals talk. Hold on. So obviously, Rod is...
Norm, good. You guys should fight. I want to see you guys.
Well, we do, but Rod, out of great respect respect for your career, your presence, your reputation.
There you go. Look at
I
this.
didn't want to,
Like
as much as
I
I
think
love
you guys
battling with Billy,
look at this.
I didn't want you to become like the referee, which is not a valuable use of your time. As much as I love, clashing with the legendary Billy George Atsakis, who I always, at least gives me credit for
I
pronouncing
don't
his
think you guys should
name.
fight here, though. I think you guys should take it down to the beaches at Woodbine and have a little mud wrestle. That'd be kind of cool. I'd pay money for that. I'd pay actually pay-per-view money to watch that.
I'll take it wherever Mr. Black, I'll take it wherever the old man wants it to be taken. That's number one. Number two, Norm, please. Number three, actually, and then we'll get to two. You got to fix your mic a little bit. It's breaking up, right? So you got to fix your mic. I don't know, do a little adjustments there while I make some valid points here. As you know, Rod, I'm probably one of the smartest guys you've ever met. I'm the smartest guy I ever met, right? I'll tell you that for a fact. I don't know anybody that spent more time, Mr. Black, on their couch watching sports than yours truly. And that's a fact. I got 45 years in here on this couch. I don't move. I don't do nothing. I just watch sports. I
heard it's your new exercise machine.
Well, and somehow still, man, I look better than most.
How come you call your couch Peloton?
Here's what I'm going to tell you as it relates to Edmonton, the Leafs. First of all, you hit the nail on the head that any of 15 teams can win a cup. So let's exclude Florida for the meantime. Any of 15 teams can win. And as you've seen in so many sports, NBA, we'll get to that in a bit. Even when you took a look at March Madness this year, you saw a Final Four with not a number one seed in sight. Parity rules the day, right? And the margin of victories are razor thin. So here's the problem for Leaf fans. Here's what I would be extremely confident. As you know, I picked the Leafs in 5, right? And as a handicapper, I'm probably the best in the business. I got them in 5. I got them winning tonight. I got them stepping on.
I would say you're also the most humble.
That goes without. It's not about humility, Rod. It's about winning.
It's about winning. No. Win, man. Billy, I love you that in you. That's what I love. It makes you a good baseball coach.
Thanks. We'll get to that later. But for me, it's all about honesty, Rod. I just got to tell the people the truth, right? At the end of the day, as my man said once upon a time, it's not bragging if you can back it up. So here's what I'll say to Leaf fans, and then we'll move on. I want to get your take on the Jays and the Raptors. That Leaf fans, for the first period and a half, Rod, tell me how when you're watching the game, were you every time the puck was directed at Samsonov, were you somewhat schemish? You weren't confident?
Oh, yeah.
What happened, Rod, after the third goal? You know what happened? Did you get that feeling later in the game that he would not be beat? I haven't had that feeling in a goaltender for a long, long time. And he carries that through. The guy was a little insecure, a little shaky. You know what he has now? The most vital thing a professional athlete can ever experience. And that's confidence coming into game 4. I look for Toronto to roll him. I look for him to roll him big, maybe 5-1 and close him out. So let's a quick sneak peek. Let's suppose I'm right. Match me up the Bruins and the Leafs. What kind of shot do the Leafs have going into a series of that kind?
You're going Bruins and Leafs already. Okay, if you do go that far against the Bruins, well, one thing about the Bruins is like a lot of people are looking at that series and saying, well, hey, they're getting pushed to the brink. But keep in mind that Patrice Bergeron's not playing right now. Krejci's out. They can float through this first thing without some of their star players. They're very difficult. Out. But I do think, based on what I saw so far in this first round, if I don't want to jinx it, if the Leafs can get past Tampa Bay, and I'm still not entirely sure because one game does not make a Vezina Trophy winner, a Conn Smythe Trophy winner. But if they can get by Tampa, I just like to kind of they have a little more grit. Than they did before. And it's not fighting grit. And I don't want Austin Matthews fighting, but everybody goes, oh, that's so cool. He's going down. They have some sacrificial grit. I like that. I think their back end is stronger with some size. I still don't think they went and got a real impact defenseman, some of the guys that were out there right now, but I'm not so sure that, they might all have that impact defenseman. All right. If their back end can carry them, you never know, but they're going to have to play so hard defensively, you guys, against Boston. Boston's so good. There's a reason that team was so strong in the regular season. And you know what I've found in the past? I'm sure you guys that President's Trophy award and all that, and nobody wants to touch it and nobody actually wants to win it, but they set a regular season record. Now, keep in mind, it's skewed, that regular season mark, because of overtime and all of that, yada, 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 and you get the points. But they set that regular season mark. And a lot of teams that do that go into that first round, and you see them get their ass kicked out in the first round because they're already living off that regular season. Boston Bruins might be the only team in the National Hockey League that plays the same way in the regular season, plays the same way in the postseason. And that's scary for any opponent. So, yeah, they'd have to be – that's the issue here is that Toronto, honestly, I thought are a better team than they were last year, have a better chance. I think we all agree they have a better chance. I said before, and I think Wendell Clark said it to me as well. Geez, I'm name dropping there. I shouldn't name drop. You know what? I hate name droppers. I said that to Justin Bieber earlier today. Anyway, so I said, I think we all admit they're a better team. Goaltending is a question mark. They're a better team. If they can get past the first round, I do believe they could play in June, but it would take so much for this team to do that. That's why I do think Edmonton, and go back, I hate to digress, but I think Edmonton's path, if they can get through this first round, is a little easier in the West than it is in the East, just because I think the East is so loaded. I think there are 5 or 6 teams in the East that honestly could get to the Stanley Cup final. But the top team, I still think, is the Boston Bruins.
Excuse me. Okay, so Rod, let me throw a little baseball at you. Pretty amazing. No,
I'll catch it.
Okay, good catch, man. So it's already been 15 years that for some people the Tampa Bay Rays are a surprise. Not for me. So this year, tying a major league record, 13-0 start, even as we speak right now tonight, 17-3, third to fifth lowest payroll in baseball every year. Does it ever surprise you, Rod?
No, it doesn't. They play in a terrible stadium. That surprises me. It's not a bad market, actually. It's just a terrible stadium. They're a great organization, you guys. Fantastic organization. I remember when my son Tyler last year went for a workout, or 2 years ago during draft. We went down to watch. He was one of the teams that he worked out with Tampa. Like, they liked him a lot, and it was fascinating just watching. I have never seen the inner workings of that. How Kevin Cash would come out and work with with Ty or the player that they had coming in that day, from the general manager down. And I thought, what a classy organization. And I got an idea of how it doesn't start at the bottom. It starts at the top, from ownership to managers. And so all of that does not surprise me. And it also doesn't surprise me, and I think you guys probably know, that they have a secret weapon on their bench. I am not the biggest analytics guy in sabermetrics, and I know they work, but I think the biggest measurement is under your nipple, is that heart. But they have a guy who is a Canadian on their bench in uniform, John Ehrlichman, who is their analytic guy, and he sits beside Kevin Cash, and they may have taken him out of uniform this year, I'm not sure. And he sits there and gives them all of the. Now, did that work out a couple of years ago? Did that work out last year?
That's what I was going to ask you. Was he sitting beside him in Game 6 of the World Series?
Yeah, no, exactly. So you know what? It's a crapshoot. I think that's Billy. That goes back to the gambling thing. That's that crapshoot that you have, right? But so the only thing I would say, and temper everybody on this, is the biggest rule. I love the rule changes in baseball. I love these rule changes. But the biggest one that no one talks about is the balanced schedule. And that balanced schedule means you play against everybody. You don't play your 19 games against the Red Sox, or Tampa beats up, and that's why the East was always been so tough for Toronto. And the Central Division, they can beat up on each other. So I would temper everybody that Tampa got off to that blazing hot start, and they're good. Trust me, I'm not taking anything away. But look at the teams they played off the start. Those first 4 series were all had teams with losing records. So I temper always those starts. I don't think you can ever get off to a slow start. It's very hard to recover. I know Washington did it a few years ago. Very hard to recover. But the middle part of that season, and I say from June, probably late May to mid-August, those are the most important parts. And that's when your rotation comes together. That's when guys got rhythm. Look at last year. I think I did a thing with you guys last year. Remember when we can roll back the tape. We're talking about Bo Bichette and how everybody wanted to get rid of Bo Bichette. I think it was like mid-May or late May. And oh my God, what's wrong? Well, that didn't happen after. Baseball is a 162 game journey. And it takes you about 70 to 80 games before you start to find your stride. So I do think Tampa's going to be in it. Don't discount the Yankees, although the bottom of the Yankees order I really don't like. The Blue Jays, I think, have man-to-man, top to bottom. I think they are the deepest team. I really do believe that. And Kiermaier is really good. I like what he has done this year. They're pitching. Who would have ever thought, we'd be talking about Kikuchi the way we're talking about Kikuchi right now, and Barrios, who's like that, who's done what he hasn't done, and Alek Manoah, who struggled. But I think they've also struggled because of the guys who struggled because of the rule changes in the pitch clock. So it's early. I think teams are also getting used to the pitch clock. That's a big factor. Easier for the batters in many ways, and the more shifts and all of that. But I just love this start. I mean, let's put it this way. I think Tampa has a better chance, Norm, because of their previous history and lineage and what they have done in the past than, let's say, the Arizona Diamondbacks, who are leading the NL West, or the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are leading the NL Central. Again, I go back to the balanced schedule. You cannot beat up on the weak sisters anymore that might be in your division. But they're all off to nice starts, and let's talk in July and June and July.
So when you're talking, obviously turning it back, I knew the minute Rumack opened his mouth, he's going to talk about Joe Madden. This guy's in love with Joe Madden.
Well, I love Joe too.
Yeah. So there.
Yeah, I love him too, but he's been gone for 15 years from Tampa Bay. All right, Tampa Bay, great story. As you mentioned, 19-3. Somehow they managed to manipulate a roster with a low pay. Yeah, it's beautiful stuff. But again, 22 games in, we'll see it.
Joe will never buy it. Joe will never buy a drink or a coffee or a dinner in Chicago, you guys. I mean, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Once you win one for some team, it's like Terry Francona in Boston. Same thing, right?
So let's get to it. Here's where I'm at, and I'm struggling again. I'm probably in the minority with this next thought when it comes to the Toronto Blue Jays. Convince me, if you will. You said the Blue Jays man for man are a little bit better than they were. So what I saw, and obviously the Blue Jays are a lot better defensively. No one can argue that. They're a lot. They
still have a question at second base.
Yeah. Hold on, Mr. Blind. Let me finish. Hold on. Yeah, let the Greek talk a little bit. So they got obviously, they're a little less Spanish. There's a little bit of a culture difference, obviously. But you can't convince me yet. I'm not convinced that the culture and the defense was the problem last year, Rod. I'm convinced that the bullpen was the issue. So you've changed everything. You got rid of Gurriel. You got rid of a guy in Tail who I think you're going to miss down the road in that 5-hole, 30 and 100 guy. I believe you're going to miss him, irrespective of some of his bonehead moves. You're going to miss that guy. I believe you got fleeced by Seattle. That's a different story. But you put everything together. Question is simple. Are the Jays better in your estimation than they were last year? Are they better equipped to win? And second of all, and most importantly, can you win bringing back that same bullpen, right? Because as you remember, it was not the Barrio, it was not the home run jacket, it was not anything of that sort that helped them walk off the field. There was a leaky pen that gave up 6 in the from the 7th inning on to the Mariners last year. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that's experience too. I think that not having been there and done that before, and kids, I do think that's that youth that I go back to that. That was such a heartbreak. That was one of the worst, honestly, losses in Toronto sports history. I really believe that, because it looked like it was locked and sealed. I will tell you guys though, and I love Jordan Romano. I think he's a great closer, but I don't think there is a guy right now that is capable of bringing of that bridge. We used to have Ward and I guess we're talking to just our age group now, Dwayne Ward to Tom Henke, and those guys that led up to Ward. You need that. Still think they need that 8th inning guy, that closeout 8th inning guy. I don't want to see Jordan Romano in a 2-all game. I saw it. I understood it the other day, because you're going into extra innings now, and the extra innings rules are different, yada, yada, yada. But a closer, I've never liked a closer in a tie situation. That's what they're in for saves for. I think they're out of their element, or when they have a big lead. So you can go back to last year and all of that other stuff. And it was an avalanche that was starting to happen. But I do think they're better. I think they are better. I think they, at times, we're going to miss Teoscar Hernandez's bat, but they're going to get that back. Matt Chapman's had a great year so far. Guys from last year are going to elevate, and you're going to see that. Remember last year, everybody said, Vladdy Guerrero was off year. I'd like to have an off year like Vladdy Guerrero had. But they're going to lead by the top of their lineup. Kiermaier has been really good, but don't live off any of these guys, because you know what can happen with injuries too, right? Yeah. Springer is George Springer, I think, is another glue to that lineup, but he's the kind of guy that can, get hurt all of a sudden too. I don't want to jinx anybody, but you got to play through the injuries, and you got to be deep, and you got to have a good minor league system to bring these guys up. But I do think if they're going to go anywhere and get anybody, I saw today, is it today they brought up Nate Pearson?
That's right.
That's huge. And I will tell you why that's big is because the Blue Jays do not have a honey, and a honey means 100. They don't have a guy who can throw 100. Manoah can get it to 100 occasionally, but he doesn't anymore. Some people say Romano can, but he's down below, like between 95 to 98. The teams that win have a guy who throws 100. Now you want your closer to probably throw 100, but that's the game now. You got to have guys to throw 95 to 100, even coming out of your bullpen. Yeah. But Nate Pearson's going to add to that. They're going to try to fix Barrios. Manoah's getting better, I believe. Who would have thought we would have talked? Those little things we're talking about now, I don't think guys are going to talk down the road. Yeah, I do think they're better, but it's tough. I'm telling you, it's tough. You're not going to play against them. Remember how many games that, even though they struggled with at times, Baltimore, you're going to play. Baltimore's a better team this year. You can't play against the Tigers all the time, in the Central.
Well, take a look, Rod. Take a look at the East, right? The last place Red Sox are 12-11. Blue Jays are.
Did you see what they did yesterday too?
Yeah, they're the only team.
Did you see that game yesterday?
Yeah, they're the only team. Toronto's the only team with a minus run differential in the AL East. Before we move on to the Raptors and get Norm in here, this is what the first thing that was on my mind when I contacted you to come on. Obviously, as a lot of people know, especially in the GTA, that you have proud papa of two sons, one that happens to be in AA with Milwaukee actually tearing it up. So I'm going to ask you this question. When you go to sleep or you're milling around, walking, I don't know, whatever you're doing, have you allowed yourself yet to start dreaming about the day when you actually step foot in a big league park and watch your boy? Have you allowed yourself that yet?
Oh, you know what? I think the day that I will tell you, any parent who has any athlete, boy or girl in any sport, and their kid does something, what I think is has an exceptional feat, that they get drafted or have an opportunity to play at that next level, be it, in any elite level, I think any parent, I'd be lying if I said no. I mean, do we know when it'll happen? One thing I can tell you is that what you learn watching, especially baseball, and unlike any other sport, my kids played hockey too, and I played all those sports, and I dreamed too, and I came close at times, but I think when you start dreaming about it and thinking about it, that's when you get in trouble. And the beauty of the game, and I think that's the beauty of Ty, is one of the things that he's really good at, is just keeping an even keel. He plays pretty fiery, but he's a guy who just can't get too high, can't get too low. And I think it's the same thing watching your kids. And, we're not playing, we're just watching. But, you want your kids to achieve their dream. And it's so cool. When they're younger, you go, okay, I can't wait for that. It's more for them. I can't wait to see them play at Cooperstown, for instance, at the little youth tournament. In hockey, it'd be the Quebec Pee Wee tournament. You can't, and there's little increments along the way. And just as you're on this journey, great things happen. And same thing when, you get a chance to, wow, wouldn't that be cool if, for like a Tyler or a Brody who plays down in the Washington area, it wouldn't be cool if they got a chance to play at Rogers Center. Wouldn't that be great? And you get to the T12 things, or you get to a tournament and you do. And so, it doesn't happen. It happens with a ton of hard work, some luck along the way. But yeah, you think about it for sure. We were lucky enough to be down at a couple last year. I thought it would be kind of cool to try to, he was at spring training, and there was a lockout, of course, at the beginning. And then later, a lot of players got to play with the big league club, and he's played in a lot of big league games at the spring training level, and he's done quite well. But I remember my wife and I were there. Well, this is a great opportunity to see him play. Maybe we'll get to see him in a big league uniform with the Brewers at spring training. So we stayed all week long. And for whatever reason, they didn't work the schedule that way. And then, so we're on the plane and I'm about to head home. And then he calls, where are you guys? I said, I'm getting called up today. I said, what? I said, what? Anyway, we able to catch it on the plane. And I think he got a double in his second at bat. So yeah, you do think about that stuff. And it's kind of cool for the parents and friends and family and his coaches that were along the way. And hope you make it. But there's never anything. One thing about baseball, it's not given. Hockey, generally, if you're in the draft in the first round, you're going to play somewhere high. Basketball first round, you are almost guaranteed to play at somewhere. But I just don't think the kids think about it as much as the parents do. But it is kind of cool. And even this year too, the WBC, Ty was named to the roster, and then he couldn't play because of insurance reasons from last year. So I think that's a goal down the stretch too, is to play for Canada in 3 years. Hopefully stays healthy. Again, you never know. Like last year, he had a great start, and just you run into injuries, and I think he's getting. You probably as a player you start to think, boy, I'm playing. I guess in the minors it's 152 or something, but you play 162 in the bigs. You go take. It's a roller coaster, Yeah. you never know what can happen. You just never know. Look at all those players, you guys. There's tons of them who had a big league. John Gibbons is one, a home run in one of his first at bats and then never got a sniff after that. Yeah. So, but it's still to make it to the bigs, that would be something. That would be, it would be really cool.
And Rod, your reaction to the dismissal of Nick Nurse, and how much do you think Masai Ujiri has made mistakes? If you think he has, where the Raptors not getting anywhere near where they were. Of course, they had a very special player winning the championship, but how do you assess all of it?
Yeah. It goes back to my last answer, guys. It's all performance related. One thing about sports, it's a meritocracy, right?
Whoa. That's a pretty big word you just used there. This is not the smartest of people that watch this program.
Guys, it's based on
what that word means to some of the guys in Barrie, Ontario, Rod.
Hey, listen, Billy. What it is, it's all about performance.
Okay.
Performance and production.
A meritocracy.
And points. So I've said this before this year, and hey, listen, I've covered that team. I covered them for 26, 27 years and saw all the ups and downs. I saw, they sucked when they got in the league. We made no bones about it. They were not good, but it was fun to watch. Then they got good, and it was still fun to watch, and we didn't mind them when they were losing. Then they got really good, and now the bar has been set so high by the Dwayne Casey era, which helped a lot, and the DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry era, which brought us to the playoffs for 6 or 7 years. And then finally the Kawhi Leonard comes in, that missing piece. Masai Ujiri also has that bullseye painted on him right now. There is no doubt. It's performance related. I don't care what anybody says. I saw some things that, where people go, oh, great season still, you almost made the play. They didn't make the playoffs. I'm sorry. You didn't make the playoffs. The play-in game is not the playoffs. That's not the playoffs. That's not the playoffs. To me, anytime a team doesn't make the playoffs in sport, that season is a failure. Mm-hmm. Bottom line. Nick Nurse knows that. Nick's a great friend of mine. He knows it too. I think, he maybe that, and sometimes in sport, you go through that timeline. I would say there's coaches in the National Hockey League, the same thing after this playoff round, who've been there for a while, general managers and presidents trying to save their ass or whatever, going to go, hey, we're going to gas that player or a coach, and their job's on the line. I would say that in hockey is for a number of teams, but Nick knew it. Nick's a great guy. He's a great coach. He will land on his feet. I thought he would land on his feet in Houston, but it looks like Ime Udoka is going to land there, and I'm pretty sure I just saw that come through, as a matter of fact, which is really unique, especially with what he went through with the Celtics, who I think really could win the NBA championship this year. This Raptor team is not anywhere close to that championship team. I don't care what anybody says, and they're going to have to start making some moves.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So again, going back to when you're talking about Nick Nurse, obviously this guy over here can relate. I'm going into my 5th year as the manager of the East York Bulldogs, haven't won diddly poo, haven't won an Olympic.
But you're well coached and you got good ownership.
Got good ownership, well coached, but we haven't won nothing. So I'm feeling the squeeze this year from our president, Andrew Green. I'm probably this is going to be my do or die season. Hopefully it doesn't end like Nurse. So obviously Nurse out the door. So that's fine. But again, as Norm was saying, at what point in time do we ask, like, does the media and guys like us or guys like Norm, I'm not media, guys like Norm, at what point do we ask Masai, say, listen, Masai, all right, you fired this guy, but you didn't do nothing at the deadline. You didn't make a decision. You stood pat. Van Fleet's a free agent. Trent's a free agent. You didn't make any moves. You didn't get the team better, and now you're firing the coach. But maybe it's you that's got to be on the hot seat. And I guess first it's the GM. First it's this guy. First it's Nurse, and then the chain of reaction goes up.
Hey, Billy, you're right on the money. Is that and I know him Masai the way I know him. He knows that too. And he takes full accountability for that. I'm sure I did not see the Nick Nurse presser, but I'm sure he said it's on me. He said that before. It was on me. It's on me. It's on me. And Bobby Webster.
So why didn't he quit then?
But Bobby Webster, I love Bobby too. Masai is still the guy who's pushing the buttons. So similar situation to the Leafs. The Leafs go out in this first round. That season, I'm sorry, the season's a failure. Even if they made the playoffs, even though they had a great regular season, the season, because what did they want to do? What was it this year? Win a playoff round, Stanley Cup or bust. Same thing. So Kyle Dubas, Brendan Shanahan, Sheldon Keefe, they're all on the hot seat. Masai is firmly on the hot seat right now. It would be, honestly, there's a guy, this Victor Wembanyama, you guys, I'm not a tanker, but this might have been the year to actually really be crappy.
Hold on.
This is a good year in the National Hockey League to be crappy with Connor Bedard. Victor Wembanyama is a generational player. He is the best player to be drafted in the number 1 seed. This is not a hot take since LeBron James.
Hold on now. Okay, fine. That's great. I take you at face value. I've heard of the kid. But having said that, does that make you forgive? Like, I've been watching for a long time. I've never been as outraged as I was early in the season. We got about 8 minutes left. For those of you that are tuning in, that's our good friend Rod Black. We'll get to him and what he's doing so you guys can see him moving forward because obviously this guy's must-see TV, smartest guy, two of us together. But anyways, I was outraged.
You guys be my agent?
Hold on.
Hey, beauty.
I was outraged, and I don't know how you felt. Watching the Dallas Mavericks at the end of the season, man, you play a whole season. You trade for Kyrie, right? You're 1 game out with 2 to go. It's Slovenian night, as a matter of fact, the second last game of the season, and you bench all your starters with a chance to win a play. Have you in your lifetime have seen anything as egregious as that, as obvious as that from an organization? And did that leave a sour taste in your mouth as a basketball guy and a sports fan?
Oh yeah, I hate it. There are a lot of things that the NBA does better than anyone else. And I include the National Football League. The NBA's culture is amazing. Their music, everything, the whole NBA, the way they've grown the global game. There's no game beyond soccer, but not as much in North America, that is as popular globally than basketball. And that's only within the last 30 years, guys, right? The Michael Jordan era took it forward, yada, yada. And more players playing. It absolutely pisses me off. Absolutely pisses me off when teams sit players. I understand load management. And by the way, my great friend, Alex McKechnie, who is the director of sports science for the Toronto Raptors, he was the guy that came up with that phrase, by the way, load management, because they needed to do it with Kawhi Leonard. The Raptors never would have won an NBA championship if they didn't sit him. I have no problem sitting players if a player has it or is injury prone. Here's the thing. They're making tons of money. The teams are making tons of money. When a big name player like that, like a Luka Doncic, like a LeBron, isn't playing. For instance, we went. I took my kids down to LA. We went to see a game, and the Golden State Warriors were playing. I don't even care if the player's hurt. There should be a refund that's in the ticket. I firmly believe that you should be getting, if the star player, if this is a game built on stars and the stars don't play, and you've paid $600, $700, and for some people that's the game of the year, and the player doesn't pay. Guess what? You don't have to pay. You can pay some of that money back to that fan. That's how we're going to get through some of this stuff. I hated it. I don't like it. I don't know if the Mavericks are in a full tank because to try to get Wembanyama would be really, really hard. I hate that. The Dallas Mavericks had an opportunity. So what, you just throw everything up? No, people pay to come and watch the games. People turn on the TV to watch the games. If we continue to do that in sports, we are going to lose sports, because guess what sports is now? Sports is now TV related. It's not ticket related. People stay at home, even though they like the novelty of going to the stadium. And here's the other word: betting, gambling. Everybody's gambling. Everybody's betting. So how does that skew things? You start doing stuff like this, you're absolutely changing the landscape of sports. And I hate that. I think you should go to a game. You should be able to see a star, and you should be able to know that the outcome of a game is going to be legit. Not when you're playing against a D team or a C team or even an F team. So that's my rant, but I hate it. Billy, I'm like you. I hated it. I can't stand it. But I understand when players are hurt.
No, absolutely right.
Like you go to a Jays game, I understand. You got to give Vladdy Guerrero a rest.
You get that. Guess
what?
We get that.
I think there's a tier of 5 players. If that one of those players isn't playing that game? Maybe there's a concession thing that you give. Oh, tonight you get a Vladimir Guerrero beer or hot dog
concession.
or whatever.
Big.
There has to be a price point fixed in because the fans are still getting it up the wahoo.
You know what? As long as corporations and greed's in charge, nothing like that's going to change. They might discount the hot dogs for 15 to 10. Who knows? But anyways, here's where we're at. We're at 6:42. Got a couple more minutes. It's a big show, Rod, for us today. This show, as you know, sponsored by the Central Ontario Standardbred Association. I don't know what experiences you have with the harness.
Buddy, I was just out in Dresden, Ontario.
You want to hold on? So you busy? You want to stick around for a little bit?
Sure, I got a few minutes. What time's the game start tonight? Is it 7 or 7:30?
You want to stick around for a bit?
I'll stick around, sure.
Maybe pop in a question. Do you know who? I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know who the Magic Man is?
Well, I thought it was
in harness race, in harness circles.
I always thought John Campbell was the greatest of all time. He was the GOAT.
This is, and there he is. That's
there he is. I know this man.
Mr. Billy O'Donnell. Bill, welcome to the program.
I've heard of the Magic Man.
Hi, how are you guys?
Pretty good, Billy. Yourself?
Good, thanks.
It's a pleasure to be on. First of all, want to just remind the people, Billy, before we get going, this show, as we grow, you can catch it and listen to Rumack, especially yours truly, can be seen on Mometu TV, Roku, Samsung, Smart. The show can also be heard on 212 platforms. This is pretty big stuff, Mr. O'Donnell, man. It's not small business here, and it's a pleasure to have you on. So the first question I'm going to ask you right off the top, right? You're a handsome bugger. Let me tell you that straight up, but here's what I'm curious to know. They call you the Magic Man, right?
Yeah.
Did you get this moniker, this nickname for your exploits on the track or outside of the track during off hours? How did they call you the Magic Man?
Well, there was a guy that used to write for what they call a sports eye. It was a racing paper. Well, it was everything, but there's a lot of racing stuff in it. And when I first went to Meadowlands, I was doing pretty good, and I was winning with horses that hadn't been doing that good, I guess. So he said, the Magic Man. Now that's one version. That's the real version. Now there's another guy. I was on the track one night, and I go on the track, and this guy said, I know why they call you the Magic Man. I said, why is that? He said, every time I bet on you in the trifecta, he said, you disappear.
So that's awesome. We got something special, Norm, before you jump in there. That's Mr. Rod Black at the top, and probably you'll sneak in a couple of questions too if I ever stop talking. Obviously, I got this habit where I just like to take over. I'm with two Hall of Famers, man, and I won't let them talk, man. Terrible human being. Anyways, this week's Costa Classic. Enjoy this one, Mr. O'Donnell, and then we'll get your thoughts on the back half. I'll give you a little bit. I'll give you.
The sixth race field, second leg of the Governor Alfred Driscoll. Trying to get him moving up. Here they come. And they're off. On the outside, General Ring leaves. Far outside, Silver Almahurst from between horses Shady Daisy with Cam Best. Around the first turn. Now on the inside, it's Staying Together. Up on the outside, the mare Shady Daisy. Then it's another length and a half the Survivor Gold from between horses Cam Best. General Ring is fifth. Length and a half Silver Almahurst sixth. Then two back to Bilateral. The trailers Incredible Aussie and Loriland Butler. Opening quarter in 26-4. Down the back stretch they go in Shady Daisy. Hard driven to get the lead. Quickly will be challenged by Cam Best. And Cam Best and Walter Hennessy looking for the lead as they approach the half. Right back out. Here comes Staying Together and O'Donnell. Lots of movement on the front end. Silver Almahurst is fourth. Survivor Gold fifth. General Ring in 6, 2.5. Then it's Bilateral with Loriland Butler and Incredible Aussie. The half in 53-1. Fastest half mile ever here at the Meadowlands. It's Staying Together. Who leads it by half a length? Silver Almahurst on the outside second with Cam Best in third. Survivor Gold up on the rim fourth. Shady Daisy in fifth. General Ring sixth. They go by 3/4 and Staying Together by half a length. 3/4 in 1:21. Fastest 3/4 ever. 3/16 to go and they're on their way home. Staying Together. And O'Donnell leads it a length and a half too. Cam Best is second on the outside. Silver Elmhurst, length and a half to Survivor Gold. In deep stretch, it's staying together, and nobody's going to catch them. Staying together by 2. Let's look at the time. 1:48 in tow. Fastest race ever.
By now, you know the name KOSA TV, an industry leader producing unique, high-quality digital content promoting harness racing in Ontario. Features, virtual programming, live events, and more. KOSA TV has it covered. Follow our social media channels and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page to view the latest content. And if you're looking to bet your favorite Ontario track, check out hpibet.com. KOSA TV, taking Ontario racing global.
What that's got to be. I'm Billy the Greek. That's Storm and Norman Rumack. We're joined by my good friend Rod Black. We're going to get into the Rodcast in a little bit. Mr. O'Donnell, so you get to the half at 53 rapid. This is 30 years ago, so 53 and change is obviously rapid fire speed, even in today's harness in today's harness game. Did you know when you made the lead at the half that you're winning that race?
I was pretty confident. He was horse of the year that year. That was part of a run where he won 10 or 11 in a row. But the 2 horses that were second and third, they were as good as he was. You just kind of had to get the jump on him if you could, right? So I was lucky enough a few times to be able to do that. So, and yeah, he felt good the whole way. I mean, he was just a big, strong horse. He was a Canadian horse. He was owned right here in Hensel. And
did you have any cash on him?
No, I didn't bet. No, but he went for 75,000, so I got 5% of half of that.
That's a good chunk of change. Let me ask you before we get the guys in here. Obviously, time doesn't stop for nobody in some of your careers in the background. Do you still get in the bike? You ever miss like getting up early, getting on the bike, man, taking a tour around? Do you still get to do that?
If I wanted to, I could. Yeah, I went down last spring, a year ago now, and helped Christopher, young Chris, there with his colts and stuff, and trained them a couple of days. But no, I don't miss it any. I never really liked the morning work. I was more of a nighttime guy. Right? I just wanted to race for money, so I was kind of greedy a little bit that way. So
yeah, nice.
No, I don't miss getting up at 5:30 or 6, which.
Yeah.
I heard one of the horses in there, Cam Best, was that out of Cam Fella at all?
Yeah, he was, and I raced him quite a lot too when he was as a 3 and 4, and he was about 5 then. Shortly after that was in July, and staying together went 148 there in a race, and in August, a month later, I went to Springfield, Illinois, and I time trialed him, Cam Best, for the owners. And what that means is he just has a prompter with him, like a thoroughbred, to run with them to make him go faster, kind of think he's in a race, but they're not going to beat you. So, and I time trialed him in 146 and 1, Cam Best. And that held for, I think, around 30 years, close to 30 years. I think maybe. Was
that Bulldog Hanover that? Are you talking about Bulldog Hanover to eclipsing that mark, or did it go beforehand?
No, before 146 and 1 was just, and excuse me, I just hit something here. There we go. He went 46 and 1, and that year, 1990, was at 2 or 3, and then Always Be Mickey went in 146. Lather Up went in 146 a few years ago, and then Bulldog went in 145 and 4 this year.
Hey, Magic Man, I got something for you guys. And so I don't know if you know this. I hate to brag, but I am undefeated.
Sure you do, Rob. Yeah. Oh,
I'm undefeated. I'm undefeated as a driver in harness.
Nice.
This is about 20 years ago, maybe more. I don't know if Norm was there that night, but it was they had some. We're not celebrities. We got a celebrity racing night at Woodbine.
Yeah.
And I happened to win, but I think I actually tied, but they still gave me the trophy. But I want to ask you, Billy, this what fascinated me, and you got used to it. And I don't know, Billy the Greek, if you've ever been behind a horse in a chair, or Norm, I think you have. But I'm going to tell you one of the most exhilarating things that ever. So the rail or the gate, they had us all in this thing, and we're all like neophytes. We all clearly don't know what we're doing. And I remember I might have had a beer or two beforehand. Should not have been doing that. And so now we're behind that gate. And when it went up or it left, that horse, I didn't have to do. I know it was like I was like on the reins. That horse just knew where it was going. That felt like I was in a rocket ship, and I was like, whoa! And I tell you, I could have used some Depends because I might have won, and they took a picture. I'm glad I didn't have white pants. But that is what a feeling that is. I mean, what was that first time that you were in the seat and it's just I can't even describe what it's like.
Yeah. Well, the first time I ever sat in a race bike, you were probably in a jog cart too, right? The longer cart. Well, I did a lot of that from the time I was very young. But my dad, he put me in a race bike to train a horse. We were living in Cape Breton in North Sydney, and I remember he let me go a mile. And I said to him, "How fast do you want to go?" He says, "Fast as you can go." Well, let a 14-year-old kid do that, right? But anyway, she went 2:11, which was back in those days. She was raceable, and so that was so exciting. And then she raced. That was her last big work before she raced the first time that year. And so my dad took her to Sydney the next week, and he raced her, and she got beaten 2:13. And the next morning at the track, boy, my dad took a lot of ribbon. They're all saying, "You better get that kid his colors." And he said he made you look bad, but that I can make her go faster than he could. So, but it was it was a thrill. But you're almost blind when you first get in a race bike like that. The horse's ass is right there. You can't see, but then here it is, 50 some years later, 60 years later, I can see where I'm going all the time. So it's just you just get used to it, right?
Wow.
So with your storied career, 5 sports halls of fame that you're in.
Right.
It looks like we're having
Norm's going to pay his bill.
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties.
I know what Norm was going to ask, though, Billy. He was going to ask, out of all the things that you've done in a Hall of Fame career, et cetera, what's your YouTube moment, your greatest moment?
I think winning the Woodrow Wilson with Annihilator, a $2 million race, and I'd never driven him before, and that was pretty cool.
That's a good catch drive.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Let me ask you something, Billy. Go ahead, Billy. Finish the story go ahead. Finish the story because I want to get your thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you personally. I get a chance to talk to you every now and then just for your continued support and the good people at COSA and their sponsorship of this program helping put it together. You see a guy like Rod Black over there. He's a bona fide legend. He's a top of the line sportscaster. Same with Rumack. Yeah. I'm just some bum from the streets that somehow found a gig and a microphone just for your continued support at COSA. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I'm not going to go any further. Problem. I don't want to blush. I don't want to put you on the spot. So, just thank you so much for all the stuff you do. And briefly tell the folks watching, because obviously the harness industry is a niche sport in some respects. We'll get into that moving forward. But just tell some of the people that are not familiar with both COSA and the harness industry, what it is exactly that you do, and why should a family, like, for example, people that haven't seen this, they associate the harness industry with gambling, with stuff like that, obviously. So why should a family of 4 maybe take a visit to Mohawk, maybe introduce that family to what I believe to be not only one of the a sport that deserves to be watched, but some of the greatest people in terms of the horsemen. You'll never find better people I've never found better people than the people that work as horsemen in the industry, both thoroughbred and in harness. Your thoughts?
Well, COSA, first of all, I mean, if they come to the racetrack, it's like something new. I mean, a lot of people come and never come back, but I find lately here, a lot of the young people, when they come, they're really fascinated with the whole sport, right? And the betting part of it, they like to bet, the pick fives and all that kind of stuff. They like all that stuff. But the funny story, there was my old neighbors in New Jersey. Her mom, she was a widow, and she used to go to the track all the time. She loved the track, Dean, and I used to get her, seasons passes for her and her friends and all this stuff. And they'd bring their chair and they'd come to the races on Friday and Saturday night. So she met a guy down there. She was older. She was probably at the time 65 or so. So anyway, we would do a few barbecues, and she had the boyfriend there and stuff. So we go to a barbecue and he's not there. So I said, where's so-and-so? She goes, I got rid of him. I said, oh yeah, what is that? She said that he wanted me to stop going to the track. She said that it's too dangerous. She said, I told him that's the safest place in the world. There's security there. There's guys roaming around. So anyway, she goes, I've been doing this my whole life. So anyway, I axed him. She got rid of him. So, but people, they're diehards, right? But
that's not your wife today, is it?
No.
Okay.
Guys, can I get everyone's permission to ask a question? Thanks.
Absolutely.
So, Bill, something happened and I got cut off. But anyway, so with all your accomplishments, and it's 5 sports halls of fame and 5,739, if I got it right, wins.
Yeah.
You must have some innate ability to communicate with a horse and to read a horse like a magazine. Am I barking up the right tree there, Bill?
I guess so. I mean, it just came natural to guys like me and Campbell and the guys that have done well all the years. Like, I mean, John, I always said about John Campbell, and I raced with him 40,000, 30,000 times, whatever. He always amazed me how he could calm down a real hyper horse or rev up a quiet horse. He just had that thing. And I guess to a certain extent, I did the same thing, I guess, but he was the best at that kind of stuff and reading pace and stuff. And it's natural. I guess it's a natural thing. I really don't know. I try to teach people stuff, but it's you either got it or you don't, I guess. It's just the way it is. Like anything, right?
Well, is there something visually you could describe for people watching that you see something in a horse, like physically, or how they move, or their legs, or their head, or is there something like that you could tell people this is something I really pay attention to in the horse?
Just his manners. They got to have manners. You got to. The old saying is, you got to drive the horse. You can't let the horse drive you, and you work on that too. If you have a real hyper horse that wants to go when the gate leaves, like you said, and you don't want them to do that, right? So you got to teach them. They got to be drivable, and I weighed 150 pounds when I was doing this. He weighs 1,000, only he's 1,000 pounds of muscle. So you're never going to wrestle him. You got to think ahead of him, right? And think for him, I guess. And that's all you're really doing. When you're racing, you're really doing the thinking for the horse, trying to put him in the best position you can for the last quarter of a mile, save the most strength. The old French guy told me one time, I was driving a horse for him, and I said, well, anything I got to know about him? He said, just save some power for come home. That's what you got to do with them. You got to, don't let them expend all the energy. So it's hard to explain, but it's.
So when you're training, as you said earlier, you mentioned training the Greek's horse, helping them out. Do you have if I was a trainer, and again, I've never been to a barn, I'd like an invitation one day, come over there, maybe a free steak dinner, but whatever the case is, we'll leave that for another conversation.
Right.
Do you have any, is there, I'd imagine that if you're a trainer, do you have any go-to tactics? For me, it would be do you have any snacks that you give these animals or something that they enjoy? You keep anything in your back pocket or anything of that sort? When you're trying to get the animal in a right state of mind, is there any tricks that the magic man comes up with from his back pocket?
He gives him a hero, a Greek hero.
Yeah, the Greek hero. Yeah. Yeah.
Magic man, what about it?
Well, no, I mean, you just have with dogs, it's safe for dogs. I mean, I've been around lots of dogs, and dogs that'll bite you, they won't bite me. I don't know why. I mean, they just feel this poor guy. I'm really going to tear him up. I don't know what it is, but I can get along.
They smell a horse on you, Billy.
Hey?
They smell a horse on you.
Yeah, could very well be. It could very well be, but we had a Rottweiler that was around the farm in New Jersey, and he was, Rottweilers, they're no joke, right? But he would come down when coffee when he was little, and give him stuff to eat, and he'd come down. He wanted to get up on my lap. Well, now he got to be 140 pounds every morning. But if you didn't put him up there, he'd growl at you. So anyway, you just put him up there. But no, I had a way with dogs. I don't know about cats. I'm not a cat guy. I'm a dog and horse guy. But anyway,
We've got a couple of questions from some of the viewers, so I don't know. I'll go in order, see if we can't wrap these off quick. We've got about 10, 12 minutes left, and we're going to get your thoughts on.
Before you go, guys, I got to fly.
You could,
Sorry,
Rod,
nice meeting you.
Before you
Yeah,
go,
you too.
Rod.
You're a legend.
Thanks,
Yeah.
I
You're
appreciate
the magic
that.
My
man.
own mind.
Norm, I love you too. Billy,
Thanks,
I
Rod.
thought
Billy,
you were calling
Billy.
me a legend.
Billy, Liberace called. He wants his shirt back.
Rod, where can people are obviously miss you a little bit, right? You're doing something through social media. Where can people find you if they want to check you out?
You're going to find me somewhere soon. I can tell you that. And we're doing a broadcast. It's on YouTube, brought to you by North Star. There's lots of stuff on social, and I'm doing some games down south right now, but really itching to get back at it. Maybe I'll get in the standard. Maybe I'll start calling standard bred races. Who knows? I don't know. But
There you go.
I'll be. If not, you'll find me at a ballpark or your local pub. Anyway, I gotta fly, guys. Game
See you,
night.
Rod.
See ya.
Okay,
Love you
Rod.
guys. Take care.
Okay, thank you,
Nice
Rod.
meeting you.
Thank you, Rod. So Billy, get to a couple of questions we have.
Yes.
First viewer asks, how much did you enjoy driving Genghis Khan? The other one, and I'll put them in order, is Staying Together one of your top three of all time? Take them in any order you want.
Well, Genghis Khan was the first horse that I drove that really put me on the map. And I got him out of, I wasn't first choice. He raced in California. Shelley Goodrow, who was, poor Shelley died young, and he was a great driver. And he was staying in California, and he recommended to the trainer that he get me to drive him. I was friends with Shelley. And the trainer wanted another guy to drive me, went to see that guy. And that guy was staying in New York, wasn't coming to the Meadowlands. So he came and said that you're not my first choice, but anyway, would you like to drive my horse? And he became 8th Pacer of the Year. And he had been getting good before that too. So it's a case of timing, being in the right place at the right time. With Staying Together, the same thing. John drove him when they sent him down to Meadowlands. John Campbell drove him first. And then he had something else in there, I guess. And then I drove him, and they just wanted a steady driver, I think. So they kept me on him all year.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, something that Billy and I have talked about with some of the, Chris Christopher, Randy Waple, some of the fellows you might know. We know them well from Woodbine. They talked about how, on the one hand, you can be friends with the drivers, but kind of like hockey, basketball, baseball, football, you're competing for jobs and for money. Were you able to be really tight, really close with any of the drivers? Is it all business because that's what you need to do to win?
Well, no, I think we all stayed pretty close. Like John Campbell's my oldest son's godfather, and Mike LaChance, and we all traveled together too. Like there were 3 or 4 of us were going somewhere to race, we'd always get a plane and get 7 or 8 guys on it, and we'd go and race and come back home and have a few beers and a few laughs. And but once you line up behind that gate, it's a different story, right? Just like when you drop the puck, it's no more friends. I mean, you're not going to go out of your way to hurt the guy, physically or.
But you might lock him in the. Hold on now. You might lock him in the box for a little bit, right? And say, take it easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got a target on
So,
it.
So Bill, I just want to extrapolate one more question for you, Bill, and that is, so you're in 5 sports halls of fame. Is there a moment from those inductions, those 5 sports halls of fame, a moment, a conversation that really still, lingers with you that you think about sometimes or often?
Well, in the Sports Hall of Fame, Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, that was a big deal. I mean, I was sitting next to Henry Richard. I mean, how much better does it get than that, right? We went in at the same time, and when you're a young guy, I mean, was a hero, right? And that was pretty moving. Yeah, when you know what that means. And then I've been there numerous times afterwards. When John, I always said that I think I was the token East Coaster that they put on there. Maybe they had to find someone from the East Coast to level things up. But then John came quite a few years later, which took him a long time, which wasn't my vote, but anyway. Mm-hmm. But when Marc Messier get in, guys like that, and you're Paul Coffey's, they're all in there, right? Those guys. So that's quite an honor, quite a feather in your hat when
Indeed.
you think about it.
So
That's great.
obviously, and I'm making an assumption here. Correct me if I'm wrong. So being an East Coast boy, obviously you either got an affinity for the Bruins or the Habs, and I'm guessing here one of the two. I'm not sure. So am I onto something here? Are you a Habs fan? And unfortunately for you,
No, Bruins fan.
I see how, there's a lot of guys. Obviously, our buddy Kenny Middleton, big Bruins fan. Jason Porwando, former guy up in your end, big Bruins fan. There's a lot of you out there, but there might be a little problem on the horizon, Magic Man, Billy O, in terms of the big blue machine. You heard of this thing called the Toronto Maple Leafs? It looks like a collision course with the Bruins. As a hockey guy, right, an objective guy, do you see a Leaf team that kind of has you curious and kind of wondering that maybe this is the year that Lord Stanley's going to pay a visit?
Well, I don't know in this next round for you. I don't like your chances, but anyway, that's it.
What are you saying? I'm a 35-1 shot here?
It'll be, you never, that's why they play those games or race those races to see who wins them. But, the Leafs, my wife, she's a Leafs fan, and I watch lots of Leafs games. They've been a very, very entertaining team to watch this year. And they get themselves in a little bit of binds, and they work their way out of it. And they got a great attitude. A lot of those young guys, they interview them now, and I think they're on the right track for darn sure. So it should be a good should be a good series if it gets to that point.
So Bill, in terms of all those Bruin teams that you've got to watch over the years, whether it was the big bad Bruins, with Orr and Espo and pie-faced Johnny McKenzie, etc., or that Bruin team that was a very pleasant surprise, maybe in 2011. They've had a lot of teams. Good for them. They've been very consistent in terms of being in playoffs and having competitive teams. Which of several teams you could pick from are your favorite Bs of all time?
I would say I moved to Boston in 1970. I went to work for Jim Doherty, and Harry Polton. I don't know if you know Harry. He was a trainer here in Ontario still, but he had a great uncle or an uncle that he trained fighters at the Boston Garden. So he used to give us tickets, and I'm just a kid. I'm 21 years old. So I got to see Bobby Orr lots in person, and that you don't realize that what you're witnessing is something special, really something special. I mean, he was, to be leading goal scorers as a defenseman, it's never happened before, never happened again, right? He did it not once, twice. And he was in Cheevers. I know Jerry Cheevers a little bit, personally. He's in the racing business and character in his own right, for sure. And no, they were great teams to watch for sure. The 70s, early 70s, and I moved away in 78, so I never got to see them much after that. But
where do you reside now, Bill?
In Guelph. I live in Guelph.
So you're in Guelph. So obviously you make the trek over to the Meadowlands and what have you on a regular basis. That's how life is these days.
Mohawk, yeah. Mohawk, yeah. Our office, the coast office, is right at Mohawk, yeah.
All right, let me ask you a question now. Is a guy in your position, obviously you're the big boss, one of the big bosses at Costa, right? Is that fair? Do you ever pick up the program? Take a look at it?
Oh yeah, I love it.
All right, hold on.
I got HBI.
All right, let's talk now. Hold on. There's a little situation that I'm 0 for about the last 0 for 300 in my pick fives, right? Usually my problem is I'm looking for a $40 key, man. I think that could be an issue with my strategy. If we get along, if we bond a little, would you mind sending the Greek over a little information, perhaps? Would you mind filling me out a couple Win 5 tickets? I'm starving over here.
See, when I was young, I trained a couple of horses and drove a little bit, and I made a living gambling for a year and a half, betting on the horses. So I'd take $200 every night and go to the track. Mm-hmm. If I made 200, I went home. Man. If I lost it, I went home too. But that was my goal, to double my money every night, and I stayed alive for a long time.
All right, how though? How specifically? Take some of the people that might be curious. Take us into deal. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? A 1 to 9 to put it show money and then just boost it up?
No, win in place and exactas. That's all they play in daily doubles. The pick threes confusing. The superfecta is more confusing. The pick fives, I can't pick 1 out of 5, let alone 5 out of 5, right? Or 2 out of
Yes.
5.
Yeah.
So it's just it's the old tortoise or the hare, right?
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying, hold on, Norm, before you get in here. So what you're saying is I find it entertaining. Every now and then I catch you on social media and you put out this list of the 20, 25 things you have or you haven't done, right? You know what I'm talking about? Have you been here, been there? I enjoy that every now and then, like you pop out of the clouds. So here's the 26th thing on the list. Has Bill O'Donnell ever been up at 5 a.m. on his HPI account betting from Australia without a program? Yes or no?
Never. I bet Mohawk, Meadowlands. I like the thoroughbreds, a little bit thoroughbred.
Yeah.
Now I'll give you a little. A guy told me years ago that, and he was a big handicapper, thoroughbred handicapper. Saratoga, it was a summer meet. You know, there's great horses there. They're more consistent than cheap ones. He said if you took the favorite, played him second with the next 3 choices, you can do some good, because you know the pools are so big anyway there, right? At the and I was over at Belmont one time. We were over to a horse show, so I did that, and I made 2,500. So they hooked me. That hooked me. So
they hooked you. They caught you for a bit. Eh? A winning recipe's hard to give up. Eh? It's a nice taste, no doubt about it. Norm, jump in here. We got about 5 minutes left with the Magic Match. For those of you watching, obviously Hall of Famer Bill O'Donnell, president of COSA, we're happy to have him. Earlier had Rod Black. I'm Billy the Greek. That's Storm and Norman. Norm, get in. We got about 5-6 minutes left. If Mr. O'Donnell's willing to stay with us, if that's okay.
All right. Absolutely. Hey, Bill. So I'm curious to know. The Run for the Roses. I'm curious to know how many Kentucky Derbies have you been to? And if you have, tell us what it was like as a professional horseman yourself.
I'd never been. I was going one year. I was invited by George Smallsreed, who was a photographer, and he had a great spot right inside the fence, the rail. And I got a call from Bill Robinson to race a horse called Alwyn Steady in the New Jersey Classic, and I stayed home and raced him, and he won. So that was, but I'd like to go. And I've been to Churchill, to the track, not when they were racing, but I've been by there. But it's, it would be quite an experience, wouldn't it?
Oh, okay. So just real quick, I'll sneak in one more before Billy comes back in. So Bill, do you have, obviously you got a chance to watch, some of the elite American or worldwide thoroughbreds, but, do you have a favorite all-time thoroughbred horse for any number of reasons?
Skip Away. He first he was, he was a local horse, a New Jersey horse to begin with, and it was a Cinderella story, really. Mr. Hines bought him for $17,500 or something, and they gave him, he had a chip in his ankle. They gave him $2,500 back to take the chip out. He never ever did, and he made, I think, $9 or $10 million. And that's and to watch him race, he was a good horse. I mean, a great horse to watch. I never missed a race that he raced in, and I saw him race a few times in, live when in New Jersey when he raced at the Meadowlands. So, and saw him. I should have taken a camera and taken some pictures of him, because what a specimen of a horse he was. But he was a favorite of mine.
Wow, thanks.
Explain this to me, Bill. Like, so I'm very curious at times. Obviously, when there's some big stake races up here throughout the fall meet and what have you, we have at times an invasion of sorts of American drivers coming up from the Meadowlands. You got all the guys, right? So, in your estimation, is there a bias kind of like that behind the reins, some guys down south, especially at the Meadowlands, that come in here sometimes and take some of the mounts from the local drivers, that these guys are better drivers? Like, obviously J-Mac could drive anywhere with anybody. So can Double J. Maybe he's a little long in the tooth. He's getting up there. But do you find there's a bias between guys south of the border and guys that are in the bike north of the border historically?
I think so. I never liked that. I traveled around a lot and drove horses, with, say, you go someplace with a stand together or whatever, annihilator, and you'd be down to drive 7 or 8 horses there. I never really thought that was fair to the guys that race them the other 50 weeks a year, right? But I understand the business, and, they put you on, take you off. But do I think that they're that much better? I don't think so. I mean, they're racing against one another. They know one another. If there's 3 or 4 of them come up here and they're all in a race together, you kind of get to know the characteristics of the guys you're racing against. So it's a little edge that way too, I think. But you're right, J-Mac. I mean, Christopher, Randy. You can name tons of them. Jody. I always said if Jody weighed 140 times, he'd be barred from the betting.
That good.
He makes very few mistakes, Jody. He's always has a horse in the right spot, and he's a big guy, right? And I think they always said in our business, oh, weight doesn't mean a difference. The only guys that'll tell you that are the big guys, right? I know. It has to make a difference.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
All the leading drivers are now. There's a lot of tall ones now, right? I mean, the guys that are taller now, but that's not my problem. So,
so here's the other piece that I'd be curious to know that throughout your history, and you might lean towards Campbell from what I gather, but if you had historically, if you could break it down, so you got this horse now, right? You go on the track. You've ridden with 1,000 different people. Well, we're getting the show here, so I'm going to get this question in anyways. Doesn't matter. You know what? So you've ridden with all these guys. If Billy O'Donnell had his last $20, right? He's got a horse. He wants to get him home. Who's your jockey from all the guys you've ever been around in your life, excluding the Godson and Campbell? Who's your guy?
Dexter Dunn. Yeah,
really.
Yeah, I mean,
why? What does Dexter Dunn? All right, what does Dexter Dunn have? Because he's a young guy. He hasn't been around that long. He's a young guy, right? So what does Dexter Dunn have, other than the innate skills that obviously are required? What does he have that you haven't seen in a lot of others? And we're talking about a lot of legends too over the years. Condrens, Browns, you name it, right? All these guys that destroyed me and took my money back from Greenwood. They used to take my money, Dougie. But anyways, go on, answer the question.
Yeah. Well, I got a horse I've had 3 horses that with Nifty Norman, and Dexter's been driving them and did really well with them too, right? And I said to my partner, I said, I never saw a guy that looks like he's driving to lose and he wins. Some of the things he does, you go, what is he doing? I'd be doing the exact opposite, but I'd get beaten. He would win. So he's got a great nose for pace, a great nose for the wire, where the end of the mile is. And a lot of guys are that way too, but he don't weigh nothing. He weighs 130 pounds maybe. He's very focused. I don't know. He just, to me, you go, well, I can't believe he won with that horse. I can't believe he did this or that. And you do stuff to go, the gate would leave and he'd take him back. Go, what the heck is he doing? And he'd win. But anyway, he's been hot the last few years. And Brian Sears before that, Mike LaChance. I mean, I can name Buddy Gilmore. He was a hard horse. Carmine Abatello. I can name.
Yeah, guy I'm imagining a guy like Dunn would question everything about the game, right? When you see him do the exact opposite and he's getting to the wire, you kind of scratch your head and you say, man, maybe I've been looking at this wrong for about 40 years, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Awesome. What a pleasure it has. We're wrapped up for time here. I could sit here and talk about this all day. You've been a supporter of ours and a supporter of mine for a long time. It's the first chance I get to have you on. And I want to thank you sincerely for your guys at COSA for your continued support. I really appreciate it. I know Norm does. He'll get in a couple of words here, but hopefully we can have you on moving forward. And you can also convince me. I'm willing to take a drive out to Guelph. If there's a little buffet, you can give me a little coupon. I'll take Rumack and we'll come out to Guelph and see you, and we can go up. We can go up.
Anytime you ever want to come out and go down to you got a beautiful training center down here called Classy Lane. It's just down the road here, 15 minutes. If you ever wanted to come out, you guys, and for the morning and do your show or do something out there, I'd love to take you to dinner.
That's awesome.
That'd be a lot of fun, Bill. I echo Billy's sentiments about the sponsorship from COSA. I've had a long time, great relationship with the Woodbine people in my early days of the fan, and they sponsor me every year and had a big night at the track. So you You're like at the crown of that industry, but as you well know, there's so many good people who work behind the scenes, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know them. And I've always said, with Billy here on the show, thanks to COSA, you can go out there, whether you know a lot or you know nothing about the horse racing industry. You can have a great time, great dining. The people there go out of their way, bend over backwards to make you feel at home. I've always felt that, and I know you know that better than anybody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, what a pleasure. For those of you that are, obviously, we've got to thank the people that put this together. Our producer, Joseph Pesich with the Fired Up Network. You guys want to see a little bit more of what we're doing, catch me and a cast of characters after the Leaf game. We'll break it down. Probably a Game 4 victory called the Leafs in 5. When it comes, Billy O, when it comes to wagering of the athletic variety, I don't know if you've heard, but I'm pretty good. Probably the best in the business, NFL and otherwise. So maybe we'll work out some kind of pact where I spoon feed you a couple winners from the athletic variety, and you return the favor with a $22 key. That sounds pretty reasonable, right?
Well, you sound like what my mother used to say, Bill. Self-praise is a poor recommendation.
You read me like a book, eh? Nah, boy. Well, you're a wily veteran. I should hope you can read a guy like me. Anyways, what a pleasure it was. I look forward to doing it again. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, guys.
Pleasure, Mr. O'Donnell.
Glad to have you on. Thanks for the sponsorship.
Yeah. Okay,
Norm?
thank you. Anytime.
Yeah, what a pleasure. Norm, with a great show, obviously. Norm, with yourself, with Mr. O'Donnell, with Rod Black.
Yep.
Whether or not you watched it live or on replay, we appreciate what it is that you guys do, the ability for you guys to allow us into your home. And again, the show, Joe, before we get going, Norm, let me kind of explain where the show can be found, Norm, if that's okay.
Yep.
This could be seen on Mometu TV. That's a pretty big deal. Mometu free apps, Roku, all smart TVs, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, as well as Android devices. The show can also be heard, for those of you that are cheap bastards and don't want to waste your data, can be heard on 212 platforms, including Iheartradio, Spotify, iTunes, and remember to download the Fired Up Network for free. And that's a good deal, again, because there's this notion, and I'm going to kind of briefly, before we go off here, I'm going to explain that there's this notion that you watch sports from 6 to 7 o'clock, right? You watch sports and you watch Noodles, the other potato head, the old dog, these characters, right? You're making this assumption because these guys are on TV and we're doing this on location, that they're more talented, they're better. I defy you to find a better hour of sports than Mr. Bill O'Donnell, than Mr. Rod Black, than the Vampire and the Boy Wonder. I defy you. If you find a better hour to spend, go find it. But you know what? Give us a chance, and we're gonna provide top of the line stuff moving forward. Is that fair, Norm, for me to say, or am I being kind of like?
Yeah, we don't have to take a backseat to anybody. I think we do a good job of keeping people entertained.
Keeping people entertained, man, and that's the best way to entertain them. Anyways, on behalf of Storm and Norman Rumack, I'm Billy the Greek. We'll see you when we see you next Monday, 7 p.m. live. Thank you.